1 year ago, frustration with police brutality in Nigeria boiled over into huge demonstrations across the country. Much of the anger was directed at the notorious Special Anti-Robbery Squad known as SARS. And soon enough, the slogan Endsars was being heard around the world. And of course, there was that awful standoff at the Lekki toll gate in Lagos and alleged shootings there. So where do things stand now in Nigeria, 12 months after those Endsars protests? Well, in a moment, I'll be joined by the renowned Nigerian political writer, playwright and poet Niyi Osundare, whose radical and lyrical art has for decades sought to voice the feelings of ordinary Nigerians. But first, let's look back at that very auspicious moment a year ago when the Endsars protests hit Nigeria's streets.
What do we want? Endsars! What do we want? Endsars! What do we need? Endsars! What do we need? Endsars!
After protests, what next is for SARS to be ended. And when we are done with that, we ask for reform of the police. We do not want a police that where they see us and say they were going to waste us. The people who are supposed to be law enforcers turn out to be lawbreakers.
I feel very bad to the extent that police that are meant to protect us are now against us. And we are shouting it. They are meant to protect us. They say no, they cannot protect us. They cannot protect us. Why? We're putting it on the news.
Well, that's just a brief reminder of the way things were a year ago. Well, to help us reflect on the Endsars protests 12 months on, I'm joined now on the line from New Orleans by the celebrated Nigerian poet, playwright and essayist Niyi Osundare, whose lyrical voice has for decades warned about the growing anger of the youth, the impoverished and the excluded in Nigeria. Mr. Osundare, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Many Nigerians describe those Endsars protests as unlike anything they'd seen in recent Nigerian history. Countless demonstrations taking place across the country daily for some 2 weeks. What was your reaction to all that? And where were you when those protests erupted?
I was here in the US, but at the same time, I was in Nigeria. Extremely cruciating moments that I had, but I must tell you, I was not surprised. What we saw was a case of boiling over of agitations, of repressed oppression and anxieties, not only by the young people in Nigeria, but by Nigerians generally. Painful, extremely painful, but at the same time, I saw an element of hope in it. Because for a long time, we've been wondering, where are the young people in Nigeria? Are they the entertainment generation that people have talked about? Are they so completely bowled over by their laptops and their little handsets that they don't even look out at what's happening? What the event of last year showed us is that there is a lot of anger in this country, and that our young ones do not enjoy what is really happening. It is a terrible, terrible situation to be in a country like Nigeria, where we have everything to make a great country. But because of bad leadership, inhuman and extremely thoughtless and visionless leadership, the country has been led to the kind of terrible situation that it is at the moment. And remember, the Endsars revolt came in the wake of the George Floyd Black Lives Matter uprising that we had here in the US, the most universal, I would say global kind of revolt and protests that I have experienced in my life, because it happened in one little place in the US. Before you knew what was happening, Black Lives Matter was everywhere in the world. What our youth were saying last year is Nigerian lives matter. Human lives matter. So it is, I got calls from friends from different parts of Nigeria. Niyi, what's happening? What's happening? I was waiting for the president of Nigeria to rise up to the occasion and address the nation immediately. First day, second day, I couldn't sleep for 2 nights. Then I had to wake up and write a short open letter to President Buhari. Are you still there? Say something. Do something. Well, I understand he did say something in the end, but he didn't do anything to douse the crisis that we had in our hands then, that we still have. The situation now is even worse than it was last year.
Going to come to the situation, the current situation, but in fairness to President Buhari, he did dissolve the SARS unit, which was the main focus of those protests at the outset before it grew into a bigger protest against bad governance. But as you correctly pointed out, a lot of raw emotion across the country during that time. And that's precisely the sort of raw emotion that you capture in a lot of your writings, which is partly what has made them so popular. How did you reflect artistically on those protests? Did they find their way into your works?
Oh, surely they did. Surely they did. You know, I have this weekly poetry column in The Nation. It used to be in the Tribune. I think I started it about 1985. Every week, it's a poem addressing issues in Nigeria, in other parts of the world. It's some kind of window that I think I have on what's happening in our world. Oh yes, I did write about that. And there are things about it in a book I'm trying to put together for next year. Such moment, just like the Black Lives Matter revolt here, you know, there are certain world-changing, history-affecting events that can just not escape the consciousness and the expression and the action of a conscientious artist. Those situations were so grave and so shocking to have escaped the attention of a writer, the attention of a musician, the attention of a street wag. You know, so it was there because the events went beyond their immediate happening. As an artist, you must be capable of looking at what's happening now, wind back the reel, and join it with what happened in the past, and then project. There should be a trajectory. How do these events bespeak the truth that's about to come? What we had last year was just a bud in a garden. More flowers are coming, unless things really change in Nigeria. There, a time comes when you just cannot put down the spirits of the people. So yes, the function of the artist, of the conscientious artist, is to make sure that the world does not forget. As Chinua Achebe will put it, you are not just a member of that group that cares about society, you are right in the vanguard of the people who are actually leading the road for change. So change it was that we had last year, and it is the remembrance of that change that we have in this year. Things will have to happen. The people who rule us in Nigeria need to learn from the past.
Right, okay. Please stay with us, Mr. Osundare. We're going to come back and talk with you some more. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the renowned Nigerian writer and poet Niyi Osundare against the backdrop of the one-year anniversary of the Endsars protest. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Today, against the backdrop of the anniversary of the Endsars protest, we are examining the highly political perspective of the celebrated Nigerian writer, playwright and poet Niyi Osundare. For decades, he's been representing Nigeria's youth and ordinary citizens in his works, speaking to them through his criticism of those in power who fail to improve the lot of the people. As conditions in Nigeria have become increasingly difficult and more challenging politically and economically, so has his writing become more critical and more urgent. And the renowned Nigerian poet, playwright and essayist Niyi Osundare, whose lyrical voice has for decades warned about the growing anger of the youth, the impoverished and the excluded in Nigeria, is still with me on the line from New Orleans. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And a year later, your assessment obviously very important. A year later, do you think the space for peaceful democratic protests has shrunk or has widened in Nigeria?
Well, the situation, I mean, that sounds like a rhetorical question, really, because the situation in Nigeria now is worse than it was last year. Remember, the Endsars revolt was not just a revolt against police brutality, important and urgent as that is. It is an interrogation and an indictment of the entire Nigerian political and socio-economic system. There is too much poverty in Nigeria, and poverty and justice cannot live in the same house. Nigeria is one of the richest countries, most well-endowed countries in the world. It often boggles my imagination that a country could have so many resources, so many endowments, and yet remain so poor. But when we say poor, who are the poor ones? The majority. Nigeria has some of the richest men and women in the world. We also have some of the poorest people in the world and one of the most abominable slums. How do we square these two? It is amazing. And I say it all the time. We need leaders who think, T-H-I-N-K. We also need leaders who see, S-E-E. Leaders who hear and leaders who feel. I often ask in my writings, as your Mercedes, well, it was in those days, or your huge SUV glides along the street, Mr. Governor or Mr. President or Mr. Senator, do you look left and right at the shacks that the majority of the people who voted for you live in? When last were you in the marketplace? How much does bread cost now, or yam? These are very important. Do you listen to the wails of the beggars? And they're all over the place in Nigeria. How can you call yourself a leader in a country that is so uneven? when you have such unevenness, such inequity, you have a kind of a recipe for violence. We don't want violence in Nigeria, but it is not enough to say we don't want it. We must also do everything to prevent it. Because I'm not just a writer, I'm a student of history. The French Revolution, history books say, began in 1789. It didn't begin in 1789. It began almost 2 centuries before. Ideas of people talking about equality and people looking at their lives, and then looking at the French monarchy, the excessive wealth, and the indulgence. So what we had in 1789 was the tipping point that is capable of happening to any country, including Nigeria. Nobody wants violence, but we must make sure we prevent violence. Poverty is violence. Police brutality is violence. Dictatorship, political or whatever, is violence. So we have to define violence in different ways.
Right. I don't mean to interrupt you there, but I mean, you talked about violence. That issue that was what brought tens of thousands to the streets, police brutality and police reform. Has that aggressive policing lessened in Nigeria in your assessments in the last year?
It is a pity, really. When I was looking at the protest, what came to my mind really was the way I have always seen the Nigerian police. They are themselves victims. Yeah, I have been to police barracks in so many parts of Nigeria. My God, the situation of the Nigerian police is awful. Often I ask, there is one in Ibadan where I live, around Sango, and I stop by that place. At times I pay a visit, and I see many of the windows have no louvers. The ones with wooden frames are eaten up by moisture or termites. So when you're taking your bath in your house up there, you can't really protect your privacy from people in the street. Police station, these are the people who are supposed to be out to defend us. Has Nigeria really defended them? I mean, it's a pity the way the Nigerian situation puts the law enforcement agencies against the people of the country itself.
Right.
Universal justice. This is important. As we do something, we can't even do something for the people of the country without, first of all, doing something for the police. Now, the police are a very important aspect of our country. Let the senators look at how much they take home. Our assemblymen, our representatives, our governors, they are serving the country. What about the other branch that is serving us? Without the police, there can be no peace.
Right. Okay. Let me just leap in there, because I wanted to talk a little bit about you, but obviously the all-consuming issue here is the Endsars protests. Is it fair to call you a radical political poet and essayist? I mean, your work seemed to tumble with crisis and criticism of political leaders in this country, and with a sort of stark socio-political analysis.
I'm not that kind of one-track, one-size-fits-all writer. Yes, I am involved. And I don't see, as I said earlier on, how anybody can live in Nigeria now without being angry. If you are not angry, it is either you are one of the privileged who have exploited the country, or you are blind and deaf at the same time, or you are insane. Things are not happening well. How can I hide in the corner of my room and write something about the beauty of the feathers of the butterfly, or count the legs of a spider, while hunger is killing people in the streets, while the snarling echo of the beggar is penetrating my window and really buffeting my ears. So this is it. I'm not, of course, not the only one. This happens to many people. But this is not to say that all I do is take up my pen and write.
Well, I do remember your works very well indeed, and a lot of people celebrate you today, and I think they will celebrate you into the future. The renowned Nigerian poet, playwright, and essayist Niyi Osundare, they're talking to me from New Orleans.